But if you open up to Proverbs chapter 1, we will be flipping pages together. How about that? Because this morning we are looking at this theme of wisdom in the Proverbs. And the Proverbs have references to wisdom at least 46 times. We're not going to go through all 46 references because that would be a really, really long sermon or a series of sermons. But we are going to do sort of a survey of wisdom throughout the Proverbs. So that's why so many different references. And I will tell you the references as we go so that we can follow along together. Or if you don't want to flip pages and you just want to listen, just listen. That's fine too, if that's going to be a distraction for you. But for those who it helps to look at the text and read and listen at the same time, I will call it out so you can follow along. So this is a survey of wisdom in the Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 1, we'll be reading verses 20 through 33. Wisdom calls aloud in the street. She raises her voice in the public squares. At the head of the noisy streets, she cries out. In the gateways of the city, she makes her speech. How long will you simple ones love your simple ways? How long will mockers delight in mockery and fools hate knowledge? If you had responded to my rebuke, I would have poured out my heart to you and made my thoughts known to you. But since you rejected me when I called and no one gave heed when I stretched out my hand, since you ignored all my advice and would not accept my rebuke, I will in turn laugh at your disaster. I will mock when calamity overtakes you, when calamity overtakes you like a storm, when the disaster sweeps over you like a whirlwind, when distress and trouble overwhelm you. Then they will call to me, but I will not answer. They will look for me, but will not find me. Since they hated knowledge and did not choose to fear the Lord, since they would not accept my advice and spurned my rebuke, they will eat the fruit of their ways and be filled with the fruit of their schemes. For the waywardness of the simple will kill them, and the complacency of fools will destroy them. But whoever listens to me will live in safety and be at ease without fear of harm. That doesn't sound real cheerful, does it? But remember, when we talked about Proverbs last week, what did we say? This is not a book of promises. This is not a book where it's true every time. This is a book of truisms and a book of wisdom, a book compiled by a father for his son so that he would learn wise ways. And so when he introduces to him the concept of wisdom, he says to his child, wisdom will serve you well. If you do not listen to wisdom, things will not go so well for you. How many parents have had that conversation with their children? Maybe not in those terms, maybe not in these terms, but have said to your children, I want you to make good life choices. I want you to make good decisions based on what? Sound reason and understanding. Because if you don't, things will not go well for you. Things will not go well for you. So it begins with a warning. Wisdom crying out in the street, raising her voice and calling out for people to hear and to take to heart what she has to say. Let's go to chapter 2, verses 1 through 15. My son, if you accept my words and store up my commands within you, turning your ear to wisdom and applying your heart to understanding. And if you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, if you look for it as silver and search for it as hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find knowledge of God. For the Lord has given wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He holds victory in store for the upright. He is a shield for those who walk in blamelessness. For he guards the course of the just and protects the ways of his faithful ones. Then you will understand what is right and just and fair, every good path. For wisdom will enter your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Discretion will protect you, and understanding will guard you. Wisdom will save you from the ways of wicked men, from the men whose words are perverse. who leave the straight paths to walk in dark ways, who delight in doing wrong and rejoice in the perverseness of evil, whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their ways. So he follows up this warning to say, not only will wisdom serve you well, not only will it be better for you to follow in the ways of wisdom, but wisdom will protect you. Wisdom will keep you from making choices that will lead you to destruction. Wisdom will keep you from aligning yourself with other people who will lead you into destruction. Wisdom and prudence will watch over you and set a guard about you. This is a parent who cares deeply for the future of their child. And not just any parent. This was a book given from king to new king. This was a book given from a parent who had lived life with a lot of exposure to a child who would live life with a lot of exposure in the public square. When I think about where we are right now in our society, in our world really, everyone is on display. Not just kings, not just rulers. Everyone is on display. Everyone's lives are out there for anyone to see. We have access not only to wisdom and understanding, thank you, Google. We have access to all kinds of destruction, and we're open to all kinds of scams and deceit. I don't know about you, but I can't count the number of Nigerian princes who have wanted to give me money, or poor widows whose husbands were persecuted Christians who want to give me money. We're open and vulnerable because of our exposure. And the more we can anchor our lives in wisdom and understanding, the more we can seek the truth and pursue it, the more we will find that wisdom watches over us and understanding puts a guard about us. Let's go to chapter 3, verses 13 through 20. It says, "Blessed is the man who finds wisdom, the man who gains understanding. For she is more profitable than silver and yields better returns than gold. She is more precious than rubies. Nothing you desire can compare with her. Long life is in her right hand, and her left hand are riches and honor. Her ways are pleasant ways, and her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to those who embrace her, and those who lay hold of her will be blessed. By wisdom, the Lord laid the earth's foundations. By understanding, he set the heavens in place. By his knowledge, the deeps were divided, and the clouds let drop the dew." When we think about creation, we don't often think of all of the intricate parts and pieces that have to fit and work together in order for us to exist. When the creation story was penned, people didn't know what stars were. When we look out through telescopes today, many of the things we see in the night sky as stars are entire galaxies. Not only is creation marvelous as in what we can see with the naked eye, creation becomes more marvelous the more we examine it with the tools of modern science. To see the 100 billion galaxies thrown throughout space, to see the stars, to count and estimate how many planets must be circling those stars, to look small into a microscope and see the parts of a cell, and to know that those parts of cells are made up of smaller parts and made up of smaller parts, until we get into the realm of theoretical physics and string theory and what even makes up the things of the universe. Is there even stuff? Does it exist? Or is it all energy and manifestations of energy at the lowest level? When we look at all of this, when we take the understanding and wisdom that God has given to us as human beings, creation becomes more marvelous, not less. Creation becomes more awe-inspiring, not less. When God created the heavens and the earth, God did not do so on a whim. He did so as a master craftsman, with all of the wisdom and understanding that it took to know that we needed a certain percentage of oxygen and nitrogen. To know that in the depths of the ocean near the volcanic vents, that creatures could live and survive without ever seeing the sun based on chemical processes. God's understanding and wisdom is far beyond what we can grasp, and yet as we exercise our own understanding and wisdom, we stand more and more in awe of the one who created it all. Let's flip to chapter 8, verses 1 through 11. Does not wisdom call out? Does not understanding raise her voice? On the heights along the way where the paths meet, she takes her stand. Beside the gates leading into the city, at the entrances, she cries aloud, "To you, O men, I call out. I raise my voice to all people. You who are simple, gain prudence. You who are foolish, gain understanding. Listen, for I have worthy things to say. I open my lips to speak what is right. My mouth speaks what is true. For my lips detest wickedness. All the words of my mouth are just. None of them is crooked or perverse. To the discerning, all of them are right. They are faultless to those who have knowledge. Choose my instruction instead of silver, knowledge rather than choice gold, for wisdom is more precious than rubies, and nothing you desire can compare with her." In Proverbs 4, 5 through 9, it says, "Get wisdom and get understanding." Get them, obtain them, do what it takes. Do not forsake wisdom, and she will watch over you. It says to love wisdom, to see wisdom as supreme, and to set it as the top goal. Not gold and silver, not even a good reputation, but wisdom. It says, esteem her and she will exalt you, embrace her and she will honor you, and become a garland of grace on your head. That's how I want to walk through life. I want to walk through life with a garland of grace on my head. Not so I can be fancy, but so that that grace can leak out into the lives of those around me. Proverbs 9:10 says that wisdom begins with a respect for God, and understanding begins with knowing the Holy One. The God of the Bible is a God of wisdom. God's infinite knowledge and understanding are what the Creator used to weave together a universe that hums in a harmony of laws and forces that we can observe and admire. In the beginning, observing this creation, the perfect and holy God saw it and said, "It is good." God created humanity, you and I, with the ability to see and reason and create with echoes of this divine wisdom. Men and women set to work tending this carefully ordered creation so that through enjoyment of our earthly home, we can come to see and recognize the joy that God has found in us. But none of us walks through life perfectly. None of us lives and walks in faith perfectly, like that original couple in the story in the garden. We doubt that God is truly sharing all of the wisdom and understanding that we need. And sometimes we seek wisdom outside of God. When that couple sought fresh wisdom, their eyes were open, but in that new wisdom, they fell far short of the trust they had left behind. The beauty of creation was less beautiful. The man and the woman were ashamed of their nakedness. Their relationship with their Creator seemed shattered forever. I'm sure that that's what they thought as they left the garden with an angel with a flashing sword guarding the entrance. It must be over now. There must be no hope now. And if the story stopped at that point, we would all be hopeless. We would be terribly hopeless. But the saga continues. The story of the human race unfolds throughout the tales of Genesis and Exodus, Judges, and into the prophets. In those stories, we find good news about this Creator who is not only the source of all wisdom and understanding, but a Creator who continues to have a desire for fellowship with that creation. God breaks into history again and again and again to remind people that they are precious. God makes promises and keeps them with a covenant family. God's mercy and grace provide resources that we can only guess at. In Colossians, Paul says that in God are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. And you know, the desire that God has to connect with us does not lack a means to do so. God isn't sitting far, far away somewhere wishing and hoping to be connected to creation. God has made avenues of connection throughout time. God shows up. God speaks with humans. God invites them into a relationship. God commissions people to share the light and the knowledge that God gives them. That's why people first began to write down the stories of God interacting with human beings. God, who is of unlimited compassion and grace and mercy, didn't stop with words written on a page. God stepped into the world of creation, scarred by imperfection, and carved out a new path for us, not only to rediscover perfect wisdom, but to be in direct fellowship with the source of all wisdom. In Romans 11:33, Paul says, "Oh, the depths of the riches and wisdom and knowledge of God! How unsearchable his judgments and his paths beyond tracing out." Jesus presents us with an open way of fellowship, and all of us can choose to enter into it. The door stands wide and the way is clear. And we've all received an open invitation to walk not only to the gates of heaven, but into the throne room of God itself. James, in our reading earlier, said, if anyone lacks wisdom, they should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault. This is the way to perfect wisdom. The wisdom that comes from heaven is pure, peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. This is the path that leads to wholeness and healing and peace. And all we must do is simply open our hearts and ask God to direct our feet in taking the first steps. If you and I want to walk in fellowship with God, we simply pray, God, I know you've opened a way. Show me how to follow you. It's that simple. If anyone lacks wisdom, ask, and God will give it. God, give me wisdom. And it doesn't matter where we are in our spiritual journey, whether we've been walking with God for a long time or whether it's the first time a person has spoken words in prayer. It's a prayer we can pray daily. It's a prayer sometimes I need to say hourly. God, I know you've opened a way. Show me. I know that you want to give me wisdom. Show me. I know that you want us to be together. Show me, so that I can be together with you. God hears our prayers. God is faithful to answer them. The psalmist says that God is near to all those who call on him in truth, those with abundant faith and those who have only a mustard seed, just a speck. God is faithful to hear our prayers, and God is faithful to set our feet on paths of wisdom that lead to peace.